yang tagmar tole shongdo chakso lore chame tenyon na mongma ger le dang nyomo chuso ji donam ngumbran jamente che dang na dang rgawi me mazut bejan tsigman ger dim ta nyara tamar ba meksam che dang nawa dang rgawi meksam ramjin da dedang jabar shibra sha Tien che nadang rgali zhur deyi rangzhin jibzhin nyun nyutrtok de jesuk pongdang zharang deyi je lordan rolar nyalzif jebshirftin pagben che dang nawa dang rgawi dungar sadnir pang ledang nyummo wangir je de la temid shirde met jibzhin yang dang tongwi shir jesuk namli Ndechir kyang, nyar jeb dagnyar kiwa dang, che dang gawa nabar stun. Gyatrin girmit chunyin da, stugni marigir donam ji, kiwa laso, dagda nam, tongwa kanyin tehma to. Pagbi shoyir toba kang, shibi shoyir tartun te, tenyid shirnan rowa yi, nyen ji tabdang nyar jem chok.
So we will resume our teaching on Uttaratantra Shastra. And right now we are on the first chapter, that is Buddha Nature chapter. In this chapter, the later part of this chapter, it has 9 metaphors and so on. But before that, in this part, we're currently learning the 10 kinds of meanings. So if you understand this 10, then later on, when it gets to the 9 metaphors, you find it rather very easy. If you do not understand the previous part, you will have a difficult time to understand the later parts. So, I really hope that we can maintain our sense of enthusiasm towards this teaching. At first, I really thought that the teachings on the Mahayana teaching on the bodhisattvas and so on, those would be easy for people to accept. But when it comes to Uttaratantra Shastra, when it comes to Buddha nature, I was really afraid that this is too profound for majority of people to accept. But now, by observing your enthusiasm, your attitude, your expression when you're listening, and your the way that you study, all of these shows that you are engaging in learning this sutra very well, and I'm quite pleased. During this study, I really hope that you could persevere. I understand that studying could be boring. Without a sense of perseverance, it would be very difficult to persist all the way to the end. During our discussion group, as well as the tutoring group and so on, not many people could persist all the way. There are people who have a really good attitude and very smart in terms of study, but they don't really persist. By observing the people who attend the after-class discussion group, I really feel that lots of people who started off really well, but it didn't persevere all the way to the end. I felt that if they were to persist to the end, then they would become really wonderful in terms of their studies. But also, I understand that maybe because of their health issues, because of their maybe afflictions and karma and maybe devotion, and maybe they start off with good devotion, but slowly their devotion completely dissipates or waning. And in such a way, you lost that kind of force that pushes you to study. Lots of people who disappeared in our discussion group, in our shrine hall. When I do not see them, sometimes I ponder, where are they? It is very easy for one or two people to disappear in the crowd of Sangha because this universe is so vast, you never know where they could go. So sometimes I do feel a sense of disappointment, but not really disappointed at you, because everyone has their own choices and their own space to make choices, their own path. In fact, everyone's making a choice on this path that is called life. And during this path of life, you continuously to encounter different kind of opportunities, different kind of platforms, and different kind of choices are presented to you, and you can make your own choices as well. Anyhow, you have such freedom. It's only that I feel really saddened. What I want to say is that I really feel that Uttaratantra Shastra is such a profound teaching. And I'm not so sure, I was not so sure whether people would be able to accept such profound teaching. But by observing the numbers of people attending this class online and so on, I notice that people are indeed enjoying this class and are persisting. As the other day we said in the Analects, once you finish studying, you should continuously to repeat and recite and review. This is quite important. I really hope that people could then build a firm foundation after studying, because after a year or two, if you feel that you completely lost all the knowledge that you've learned in all these classes, that would be such a pity if you lost all the knowledge that you studied. So let's continue from yesterday. Yesterday we talked about the changelessness of Buddha nature, and then we talked about the meaning and how it corresponds to different aspects. So now we're on the fourth aspect, which then it talks about the way generation takes place, or samsara takes place. So generation, or it means samsara, is how our world is. From one aspect, our world exists in a space. it floats in space. From other kind of theories, we can try to understand why it floats instead of falling from the space, especially when our planet is saturated with, majority of our planet is water, and some of the beings are facing up and some of the beings are facing down. So with our own conceptual mind and just trying to think about it, it feels really strange. In fact, just like that, out of the space, the world exists, including the material and as well as the sentient beings all exist. Use the phenomenal world, the material world, we can correspond to our inner world. This is quite interesting, isn't it? In fact, and by understanding this, it could give you great help in terms of practice as well. If we can understand the cosmos, the universe, and if we can then understand that the same way corresponding to our own inner world, in fact, it is quite logical as well. The next part, it says that the improper conceptual activity rests upon the nature of the mind. The improper conceptual activity brings about all the classes of karma and mental poisons. As we said earlier, all the phenomena are just like space. It doesn't have any solid existence. It is space. It doesn't have any existence in it. And then from such space, wind started churning, and then from wind, water started to rain, and then became the Vajra ground. Over here, the improper conceptual activity means the perverted view of taking what is impermanent as permanent, what is suffering as joy, what is non-self as self, and then what is not pure as pure. So there's the imputed ignorance and the ignorance that we are born in, or we're born with, but for the bodhisattvas and Buddhas, they do not have such. However, for ordinary beings like us, we have such imputed ignorance as well as ignorance that we're born with. For the ordinary beings, the nature is luminous nature. And we just only obscure it. As wind supports water, the improper conceptual activity creates all different kinds of opportunities for the development of mental poisons and karma. So just as wind, the afflictions continuously to increase, and just like water, how water then how the ground and earth emerges from circle of water being churned. Likewise, the polluted skandhas, entrances, and elements and all the existence consisting of suffering emerge from water like karma and mental poisons. Which means out of space, after a long period of time of changes, this material world has the four phases of destroy and birth, just like how the modern scientists talk about Big Bang Theory. It talks about how before tens and even dozens of billions of years ago, because of the Big Bang, the world is formed.
本来的这种
So
如来藏呢，就
similarly,
是它是这个无为的，
Buddha
就像虚
nature
空一样的。
is
但是在这个
unconditioned, just like
过
space
程当中的话，
is
那就是可以把
uncreated.
这个每个众生的这个业和烦恼啊，就是业和烦恼的话呢，
But
实
the
际上是
sentient
一种
beings'
这个
afflictions
分别
and
念
karma
啊，就是
that
非
are
理
the
作业呢，就是
dualistic thoughts
一种
that
分别
are the
念。 然后它
improper
的这个三
conceptual
轮之中呢，
activities.
慢慢形
And
成
then
了这种
because
这
of
个
their
业和烦恼，业和烦
grasping,
恼呢，就是慢
the
慢这个形
threefold
成了我们
grasping,
的忧
then
肉的这个
slowly
蕴结
it
处啊、身体啊，
forms
然后呢，就是
skandha
变成
and
了这个众
afflictions
生啊，
and
就这样的话，最
entrances
初的这个形成
and
呢，就是也会
elements, and
会
then
这个
that
允许的。 然后最后呢，就是众生在这个
forms
时
the
间当中，
sentient
这
beings.
个业与烦恼啊而形成的身体呢，就是毁灭的。
And
当
then
然，这
the
个我
the
们的身
body
体毁灭
that
呢，
is
这个不一
formed,
定是
beca-
这个
formed
阿赖耶毁灭，阿
from
赖
the
耶的这种
skandhas,
本体的
entrances,
虚
and
空
so
呢，
on
还是
will
是
also
这
be
个可以说是
destroyed,
存
will
在的，
also
以
cease.
无为法的方式来存在。
But the alaya
所以我
will
们在这里呢，
stay in the
从这
way
个
that
佛
it
教
is
的这个因果
unconditioned,
轮回来讲呢，
in a way,
就是应该
in a
是
form that
有了
it
这样的
is
因以后呢，
uncreated.
产生这样的果啊，就是
So
有
because
非
of
理作意的
such
话呢，就是轮
such
回的各种痛苦呢，就
result,
可以
it
产
has
生的。
such
我们经常
causes.
说是这个凡夫呢，就是为这个过啊，就是菩萨呢，就是
We
为
often
因
say
啊，有
that
菩萨的是害怕
ordinary
这个
beings are
造恶
afraid
业，就
of
是最后形成
fruition,
可恶的
but
果报。而菩
bodhisattvas are
凡夫
afraid
人呢，
of
就是他
the
不知道，
causes.
他当场的这个
The
这种这个感受
ordinary
呢，
beings,
就
they
比
don't
较执着的。
understand
所以我们通过以
the
上的这个
causes
分析
before
的
the
话呢，就是实
fruition.
际上呢，
They're
就
only
是这个
afraid
众
of
生
the
啊，就是
suffering that
众生
comes
是确实是
when
有史以
it
来
is
这个轮
already
回
a
在
fruition.
流
But
转
they
在
do
这个轮
not
回当中
know,
的话，
they
并
do
不是
not
没有因
understand
的。
that
应
there
该
is
是这个
causes.
阿赖耶
There are
识
causes
啊，不
before
说
that.
阿赖耶，如来藏呢是虽然是清净的， 但是也
Buddha
没办法
nature is
在里
pure.
面呢，在这个阿赖耶如来藏当中的话呢，都会那个就是
And inside
就
this
形
Buddha
成了
nature,
这样的一个轮回，就是讲这个道理。
it
那接下来
forms
呢，
such
就自信
generation
无
or
边
such
智力啊，就是
samsara.
但正在这样这
The
个
next
现
part
象的
then
时候，
talks
其实
about
这个自信呢
explanation
就
that
没有变
ans
化的。
the essence
就是
is
心心如
undefined.
虚空，无
The
因
the
也
sec
无缘，无居无有生，无灭
The
也无主啊。
second part then it
这个
talks about
有点热啊，是吧？
the nature of mind as element of space in that stanza.
窗户也开了，也没办法，是吧？
It's a bit warm.
啊。这样的，今天我们这个校正啊，就是也是很重要的，就是心性如虚空。因为
This is
这个
This is a
宝心论呢，
very
就是实际上是
important
先宗密宗
stanza.
这
In
个
fact,
就是也可以说就是念戒宪宗和密宗之间的一个
Uttaratantra Shastra is
它是一个
a
非常关键的这
teaching
个
that
论点。
connects
所以这里面的有
esoteric
些
to
字呢，
exoteric teaching.
一般的我们这个密宗、宪宗当中呢，就是根本不会提的有个别的字。
Some of the
有些是跟密
words
宗的
are
有些修
not
行条件里面
mentioned
的这
in
个字呢
Sutrayana, but
完全是
only
相同的
Mantrayana.
是这样的。
And
那么这里就是说，
some of the
我们的这
Mantrayana
个
teachings
众
use the
生的这
same
个性
kind
的
of
这种本性呢，就
vocabularies.
是实际上是
So over
光
here
明
it talks
的
about
就是
the
这个也叫
nature
做是这个如来
of
藏。
mind is
那么
in
它呢，
fact
用
luminous
比喻来说明
Dharmadhatu.
的话呢，就像这个无为法、无有阻碍的这个
And
虚空一样的。
with
那虚空有
the
什么样的特
metaphor,
点呢？首先是没有
it
进
says
取
that it do
啊，
not
我们任何其他的
depend
法
upon
呢，
the
就是它有自己
productive
的主要
causes,
的这个
and
进
it
取。
does not depend
还有
upon
呢，它要产生的是
simultaneously
这个依
active
靠这个外面
conditions,
的
just
一
like
些
the
具身的
space.
这种缘啊，就是具身的缘，像这个顷刻的，
So
像我们这个就是顷刻
what does
啊，
that mean?
就是什么大米啊，就是这些的话呢，它自
Such
己有
as
自己的
barley
一个
or
注意叫做
rice,
是进取因。
they
然后外面
need
的这个
the
地水火风
productive
啊、阳光啊，这些
causes.
叫做是这个就是进取，
And then
就是愿啊，就是它的这个具身
Uh,
愿，就是
what
具身
are
愿。
these
然后
productive
同时呢，就
causes?
是也
They're
不
the
关待就是因
such
缘
as
这
the
个聚合
sunlight and
啊，因和
raindrops
缘
and so
分开
on.
没有的话呢，
And
就是
then
聚合也没有。既然因缘没有产生的话呢，
if
那
it
就是
doesn't
刚
have
开
such
始就是这个
causes,
虚空不可
if
能
it
有产
doesn't
生的。
depend
然
on
后
the
中间呢，就是
conditions,
不可能有暗
then
处，
there
最后呢
cannot
就是不
be
可能
any
有灭灭。那
fruition.
同样的
Just
道理
like
呢，
that,
虚
if
空
there is
没有
no
这些
productive
生住灭的
causes or
这个有为法的法相的话呢，
active
那我们的
conditions,
这个心呢，也是
just
一模
like
一样的
space,
啊，就是首
then
先是没有
how
进
could
去。
there be,
然后，因为心的
how
这
could
种
the
心
space be
它这里的心
created?
呢，啊，我们按照一
So
命的角度来讲呢，就是
The mind, according to the Pramana teachings, it says that the mind is a luminous cognition. But over here, the luminous nature, luminous Dhammadhatu, is not the kind of mind that we usually talk about that is only dualistic thoughts or anything. It is, in fact, the luminous Dhammadhatu. And if it doesn't have any productive causes or any of the active conditions, it is not increasing, not decreasing. So in the Buddha Nature Sutra, it talks about this. As well as Avatamsaka Sutra, it says that even if all sentient beings achieve Buddhahood all at once, at this time and before this, the Buddhi neither increases nor decreases. So the nature of Buddha nature of Tathagata did not increase nor decrease. So from the nature of all sentient beings, there is no such increment or any of the decrease either. According to the Great Jewel Sutra, Great Jewel Heap Sutra, where it says that just like how all phenomena does not, just like how all phenomena abide in the space of Dhammadhatu, it doesn't have any increases nor decreases. So just like space, it doesn't have birth or death. And our mind, our nature of mind is just like that. It doesn't have any birth or death. So from the Sutrayana point of view, we can use this metaphor of space. But from the pith instruction aspect of Mantrayana, we can then take it as the metaphor of space is not only a metaphor, rather it is a pointing out instruction. Lots of masters would ask their disciples to then watch their mind when looking into the space. And when looking into the space, the master would ask the disciple to then contemplate your mind is no other than space. When your mind is moving, when your mind is in turbulence or in kind of activity, have any thoughts, at that time, just stare right into space. In fact, the space does not have any increase nor decrease. In fact, the nature of mind is just like that. Before we recognize it, before we recognize the nature of mind, you may feel that I'm happy, I'm sad, I'm anxious, I'm comfortable. And after a little while, you may feel that everything is hopeless, everything is so dark, and everyone around you is just like the yakshas or demons. And then after a while, you may then perceive the world into something really beautiful. Everyone's just like the gods and goddesses, and very kind and compassionate. In fact, our mind fluctuates a lot in different activities, sometimes happy, sometimes sad. But when we recognize the nature of mind, that is no other than the space, not only from the theory, but you have to practice it by looking into your mind. For people who received the pith instructions of Vajrayana, you probably have had such experiences. So just look at your own mind and contemplate how and what is my mind. Especially when we're looking for it. Just like the story of how Manjushri taught the 200 bhikshus, the method that he taught to the 200 bhikshus to watch the mind with the mind.
就是在学院居住过的那个拉荣居住过的登珠法王，就是第一世登珠法王，他的很多的大圆满的教学当中的话，经常用这个知识虚空，就是直接看那个前面的这个虚空。所以现在很多人的，就是包括我们这个尼玛巴的一些藏传佛教的一些，不管是你真我没有证我，就是经常做的就这样。
Lots of practitioners do that like this.
大家都就特别就是专注，
Everyone just
旁边的人都觉得说，可能
one-pointedly stare into the space, and everyone feels that is he looking at something in the space?
看虚空有什么可看的？就是
Kamodeva once criticized that what are you looking at in the space? Why are you so arrogant and pretending yourself as a yogi? There are people who pretending to be a true enlightened yogi by staring into the space. In fact, there's nothing to look into the space. By looking into the space, you're looking at the nature of your own mind. By recognizing the nature of your mind. There are people just pretending, and there are people who understand the true method of such pithy instruction. Anyhow, I think this one is, this verse is quite profound. When you have time, please do read over again and again. In fact, lots of things are birthless and deathless. We are not only talking about how to recognize from devotion, we can also understand it from the aspect of logic. Many masters pointed out that in 21st century, the Buddhists should be then practice and study in a way that is based on logics and analysis. Unlike previously, in the previous centuries, the practitioners can be of the dull faculty who just simply have devotion and not much of the logics. And I think we should have both of this, so that we should have devotion. At the same time, our belief should be able to go through logics and analysis. So now we reach to the last one, that is the summary, where it says that this is clear luminous nature of mind is as changeless as space. It is not afflicted by desire and so on. The adventitious stains which are sprung from incorrect thoughts. So clear and luminous. When it talks about luminous, it doesn't talk about the kind of light that comes from lights. It talks about the essence or the nature of mind that is pure. It is neither nirvana or samsara. It is not something that is completely empty or completely existent. It is in fact clear and luminous. This kind of mind, during your sleep, during your meditation, during the time that you may pass out, at any time, in your meditation and in Bodhisattva's meditative state, this kind of mind does not interrupt at all. In the Pramana, it says that the mind is clear luminous, and all the impurities are adventitious stains. So the impurities are no other than adventitious, they're temporary, but the nature is not impermanent. The nature of it is permanent, and it's just like space. However, the incorrect mental activities could create afflictions and so on. This is called the impurities of affliction. And then there's the impurities of karma, and also the impurity of birth. In Abhidharma, it talks about these three kinds of impurities or stings. In fact, these three are all adventitious. They're like the guests and not the masters. Sometimes the guests live for a long period of time, but they don't really go at all. Some of the students, they stay here for a long period of time. They're not the official students, but they are just there for a long period of time. But this kind of adventitious stings does not block or cover our luminous mind that is completely pure. Also, there are the different kinds of, or all kinds of manifestations, but all these kind of manifestations has the nature of emptiness as well. According to a sutra, according to the methods of all dharmas with no strife Samadhi Sutra, it says that noble or humble, male or female, beautiful or ugly, old or young, such distinctions of these various worldly phenomena is ridiculous. So a magician could then conjure illusory person or conjured person to be noble or humble or female or male, beautiful or ugly, old or young, any kind of forms, just as how in our movies there are different kind of manifestations. However, if you were to get attracted and attached to such kind of appearance and manifestation, it is really ridiculous, because they're no more than manifestation or a magical conjure person. So you should not take them as something that exists solidly. According to Nagarjuna's Nagarjuna's Shastra, it is called Exposition of Bodhicitta, where it says those who understand the shunyata of phenomena, but also believe in the law of karma and its results, are more wonderful than wonderful, more astonishing than astonishing. So when you know that all the phenomena is empty, then how could you believe in the law? Then the law of karma and its results are really wonderful and astonishing. I really hope that you could memorize this as well. If you could understand the profound meaning behind it, that would be even more wonderful. Now, it means that when you understand all phenomena is of this nature of emptiness, but there is still the law of karma and its results. Isn't that wonderful and astonishing? All the phenomena are just like space, but the law of karma and its results still exist. Isn't that astonishing? In our world, when we talk about when we see some phenomena, when we see some people as really rare, and we would then say, wow, that's astonishing, but that's not really astonishing. What is truly astonishing is that the phenomena, all the phenomena, including samsara, is all empty, is of this empty nature. But still, we are bound by this karma and its results. So lots of masters talk about how firm right view is extremely important.
什么是静的话呢？虽然是不成立的，就是非常的这种奇怪，
Our
但是呢，
life, our
就我
world
们还没有证悟到
does
这
not
种
have
境界
any
之前的话
solid
呢，
existence.
因果这个无气因果
But
关系
before
呢
we
这个
understand
是无
such
气的这个成熟，
emptiness,
这也
the
是
karma
就
and
谁也
its
不可否认的
results
啊，就是这是毋庸
will
置疑的。就这个问题呢，就
undoubtedly
是特别有意思的啊，就是所以
become
刚才
matured when you
这
do
次诸法公义
create the cause, do
什
have
么
the
二义
cause,
一果
then
这
the
种，这
results
个
will
呢，你们大
definitely
家还
come
是
to
应
fruition.
该再考虑一下啊，就是
So
这
I
个
think you should
这样的道
really
理，就是自己
contemplate
慢慢
upon
的
this
思考，慢
stanza
慢的思维，
slowly
回
and
去的路
slowly
上的事就是
and slowly
生息
contemplate
自
upon
生
this
气，息有
on
自
the
息
way
有
back home and memorize and recite it.
对吧？稀奇吗？稀有吗？
Is it wonderful
应该
and
有一点感
astonishing?
觉，应
Do
该
you
有
feel
吧
that?
啊，有啊，那还可以，
Good if you
哎
feel
呀
that.
有感觉就好一点了。那接下来我们就讲那个解说必等之差别啊，就
So next one,
首先讲这个
then
无边
we're
缘的
going
生灭
to
的差
talk
别，还
about
有呢
the
就是改变对应这个
next
散伙
part,
的
a
差别
summary of
两
the
个方面
way
首先呢，就是讲这个
disintegration
无边呢，就
takes
是远离
place.
生和灭啊，就是这个无边是指的是应该这个如来藏嘛，就如来藏的话呢，其实生和灭都没有，就是这个生也没有，就是如
In
来藏
fact, there's no
有
birth
没有
and
只是
no
今天如来
death.
藏降生了，就是就是今
Can you
天
say
如来藏
that
死了
your
就我给大
Buddha
家念个
nature
嗡嘛
is
呢叭
born
咪吽
today,
没有这样
and
的说法，
tomorrow
对吧？
my Buddha nature is
对吧？
dead? I
没有
have
这
to
样的
chant
说
Om
法。
Mani Padme Hum to it.
那什么样呢？就是一叶护水当，非宁次正成。
It is not brought into existence by the water of karma, of poisons and so on. Hence, it is also not consumed by the cruel fires of dying, falling sick, and aging. So the nature of mind,
就是业和烦恼，就是我们前面就是
as we said, the karma and afflictions are just like water and wind and earth. All of these,
就是依靠如来藏而产生的，就是这个可以这么说，如
in
来藏而
fact,
显现的。
sprung from Buddha nature.
但是呢，这个业或烦恼也好，或者说是我们的这个
But
罪、
karma
地、
or
风
afflictions
这些能不
or
能
the
产生那
water,
个虚空呢？就是不能
earth,
产生
and
虚空啊，就是我们
wind, do
就是
they
产生虚空就是没办法的。
could
所以
they
产生虚空
create
是没办法
space?
的。可能
In
一
fact,
民
that's
学
not
一民的人
possible.
应该就是
For the
会
ones
说
who
啊
studied
我们
the
这个水就变成水汽了，
Pramana
就是产生
teachings,
虚
the
空，其
Buddhist
实不是
logic,
水汽虚空
you
本来就是无为法，就是它没有
sometimes
能
would
生
like to
所
argue
所以
that
一
water
民
could
当中就是这个也
evaporate
是不成立的。
and then
那
it
这样的
becomes
话，
space.
业
That's
和这
not
个
true.
烦恼
It,
就是
it
能
doesn't
不能这个
become the
产生这个
space.
如来
It
藏光明这个
evaporates
前
into
所
the
未有的
space.
这个心呢，不可能产生的，因为它是就我们前面讲的一样，就是不是就是
So
因缘这个
this
作色的
luminous
啊，就是
mind
非
does
定
not
之
sprung
真诚
from
就是
anywhere.
这个如来藏呢，就是不是依靠
The Buddha
这
nature
种这个业啊、烦恼啊，就是众生的
does not
这个因
rely
接
on the
触啊，诸如
karma,
此类的这些世
on
俗法
the
的
afflictions,
就根本不可
or
能
on the
这个产生
skandhas,
或者是形
elements,
成这个如来
or
藏。原因
entrances.
是什么呢？就是它是
None of
就
those
是
could
是完全是
create
像虚
Buddha
空一样的
nature.
这个无为法的东西啊，就无为法呢
But
就
Buddha
是
nature
就
is
不可能
just
就
like
是
space
产
that is
生如果无为法的
uncreated by
能产
anything,
生的话呢，
not
那就是
dependent
什么
on
非觉则
anything.
密啊、觉则密啊，或者说是这个使女的儿子等等，就是这些也是可以这个
If
产生的，就没有的。
You say that
那同样
space
的道
is
理，我
created
们
by
这个
something,
实践当
then you
中的
could
这样的
say
这个
that
如来藏的
the
话呢，就是会
the
不会因为
barren
虚空
woman
的话呢，
give
就是
birth
对
to
这
a
个
son.
火啊，就是这些呢也没办法就是毁灭吧，就是所以我们这个
Because
报
it is
信论
not
当中呢，一会儿
created,
用
therefore
水
it
啊，
is
一
not
会儿用
consumed
风啊，
and
一会儿
destroyed
用
by the
大
cruel
力的，
fire
一
of
会儿用
dying,
火来
falling
比喻。
sick, and
所以
aging.
弥勒菩萨经常
Sometimes
就是我
in
们
this
常见的这个地
text
水
we
火风
see
来
that
给我们比喻
the
啊。那么
metaphors
这样的话，就是我们这个实践当中的话呢，就是
Lord
有这
Maitreya
个
uses the metaphor of water,
死
sometimes
亡
of
的这种
wind, sometimes
火
of，
还有这
fire.
个病痛
So
的
the
火
fire of
衰
death,
老
the
的火，
fire
这
of
些烈火呢，
falling
会
sick,
不会
and fire of
这个
aging.
焚烧这个如来藏呢？就
Can
是
they
这个也是
burn
不可
Buddha
能的
nature
啊，
then?
就不管是
That is not
结魔火也好
possible.
还有我们的
Let
这
it
个地
be
狱
the
火也好，自性火的话呢，从来都是我们
Let
前
it be
面讲
the
的这个虚空是
end
从
of
来也是没
time
有
fire
被
or
他们就
the
是焚
hell
烧过啊，
fire
就没有
or the ordinary
被他们
fire.
焚
None
烧
of
过。
them
那
could
这样的话呢，
burn
我
space
们
just
这
like
个
that.
火呢，就是
The
就是
Buddha nature
老
cannot be
老是
burnt.
冰，就是或者说是冰和 和老和还有这个死的话呢，它这种三
When
种
it
法呢，
comes
从来
to
也是
sickness
没办法焚烧这
and
个如来藏，不
aging
可能
and death,
破坏如
they
来藏。
could not
它这个
destroy
唯一里面
Buddha
就是那
nature.
个，另外有一个汉地的那个唯一当中的话呢，就是什么这个自
In
信
the Wei Dynasty's
心
translation
气象如虚
of
空，
this
什么
text,
信
it
念思维
also
风，
have the stanza where
说
it
不
says
能散坏是吧？就是三次
where
吹
it
散
says
的散，
that
就是那个
the
气诵
fire
里面
could
有
not
有好像
the
跟这个
fire of
两个气
incorrect
诵的话
view
有点点
cannot
不同，
destroy
就是自
the
信清
Buddha
净呢，就
nature.
是
The
它的
water of
相似如虚
afflictions
空一样
cannot
的。 然
destroy
后先念思
Buddha
维风呢，
nature,
就是
and
不
the
能就
fire
是
of
会闪，
old
不
age,
能散
sickness,
坏。
and death
就是
cannot
有这个
burn
方
out
便应该
the
有
Buddha
这个唯
nature.
一吧，就
So
是
this
那个
is
就是报应
included in the
报应吧，就是那个当中的宋字对
in
应的
the
词呢，稍
Wei
微这个有一
Dynasty's
点点这个不
translation.
同。
So there's
但不管怎么
some
样呢，就是
difference
意
over
思
here.
就是说，我们的这
Anyhow,
个如来藏呢，就是没有生灭啊，就是它不是
the
依靠这个
point
命
is
当来
that
这
Buddha
个产
nature
生
does
的，
does
也
not
并不
have
是呢，
any
就是这个就是什么这
ceasing
个老死
or
病呢，
birth
就是
at
会
all.
坏，就是焚烧。
It
啊
cannot be
所以
destroyed
那么
or
就是
burn out by the fire
就是
of
不是用这个隧道来
afflictions,
形成
nor
的，
of
也并不是祸道来
the
毁灭。
fire of
它这
old
里
age,
可能
sickness, and death.
这个如来藏就是这个里面的有些比喻的话呢，
Some
比
of
如
the
说
metaphors
我们四大
included,
当中啊，就是四大
such
当中的
as
话呢，
in
地
the metaphors
水
of the
风
four elements,
就是这四个的话呢，让它
the
形成的四个的一些比喻，
earth,
或者是存在
water,
的
and
一种比
fire.
喻。然后祸的话
and
呢，就是
wind.
经常是会犯的
Fire
一个比喻
is
就是这个
usually
生和
used
灭
as a
当中的话呢，
metaphor
我看到
of
虽然我
destroy.
没有看到其他的一
and
些这个注释里面这样分析，但实际上呢，好像是好基础的话呢，
This is
这
not
个我们四
included
大当中的
in
这个
other commentaries,
有
but it
三
seems
三
that
个这个
these
三大呢，就是用这个生存来比喻，就是这个如来藏有没
these
有生
three
存方面比喻。
metaphors
然而祸大的话呢，
are
因为祸
then
本来就
used
是它
to
有
talk
吞噬
about the
和它有
birth,
焚烧
abiding,
的作用
and
所以
destroy.
用这个来
So
就是
fire
如来藏
usually
有没有
talks about
毁
the
灭的，
destroy
从这方面来
aspect.
进行比喻的。那接下来呢，就是讲这个对应
Now
这
to
个三火之
continue,
差别就对
Then
应
it
三火
talks
之差别。
about
当知芥末火、地有平
the
常火。
three
以
fires.
此呢，就是如这个四火、冰火、极乐。
How can
就
this
是
be
它这里
understood in
我
its
们应该
given
通过这个这
sequence?
三个火呢，就是
And I
这
resemble
个
the fire at the end of
这
time
三个
and
火吧，
ride
就
of
是
hell
跟这
and
个
an ordinary
老
fire.
和死
So
病就是这三
how the
种
death,
法呢，
sickness,
就是进
and
行这个
aging can
比
be
较就进行比较。
corresponding to the
怎么
three
样比较
kinds
呢？
of
就
fire.
是首先我们
How is
可以
it
这样
compared
讲
to，them?
从这个整个世界的七世界来讲的话呢，
From the
到最后
aspect of
就是到最
material
后呢，我
world
们经常说是
till
这个
the
七祸
end,
一岁就是七
we
祸一岁
usually
一
talk
凤，就是
about
这个毁灭世界的时候
the
嘛，
end
有
of
这个
the
七大祸，
world.
就是
The
那么这
world,
个是
the world was
整
then
个这
destroyed
个
of
山河大地也好，
by
外
the
面的这
seventh
个七世界呢，就是
fire
全部会这个烧
and
坏无疑
one great
这是
water
这个叫
that
芥末火，
destroys
那个
this
叫做是
world
这个
completely.
这
That
这一
is
届就是
called
最后
the
末尾的时候呢，
fire
用
of
这样的这种
the
祸
fire at
出
the end
现
of
这
time.
个叫做是芥末祸。然后呢，就是我们这个有情世界的话呢，就是在地狱里面，
How
不
about
管是复
the-
活地狱也好，还是这个无间地狱，中间有8
How
个热
about
地狱吧。
the
那
hell
么
realm?
热地狱的
In
这个
hell
祸的
realm,
话呢，
there's
就是其实
the
是比我们实
the
践的
most
这个祸
suffering
还要这
hell
个
realm,
热
and
度，
then the
就是它那个温
hot
度是特别
hell
高的。
realm and
那
the
么
cold
它呢
hell，realm
就是
and so
让
on.
焚烧，就是我们这个有情世
So
界的这个
in
整个
hell
的这个
realm
无云的这个身体就是地狱众生
The fire could then destroy the
没有
skandhas
无云都。
of sentient beings.
我的居舍论现在忘了，怎么办呢？你们谁给我讲一下？
I think I've already forgotten lots of
无云就是
the
吧
knowledge taught
色
in
蕴
Abhidharma.
地狱众生的色蕴是怎么产生的？
How does hell realm beings have their
业力。
forms? Because of the
化身
karma manifestations?
好嘛，
Okay.
那就应该是对吧？让这个焚烧就是这个地狱众生的这种身体就是身体，
So
这是
such
这个地狱
fire
火
could burn
然后我们实践的一个
destroy
平常的这些
the
火的话，
sentient
自
beings
性或者
in
平
hell
常火的
realm.
话呢，它让这
The
个燃烧
ordinary-
就是所有的这些
ordinary
燃料
fire
就是木材也
then
好，
could
房
burn
屋
out
也
the
好，就是
fuel,
这些都
let
会
it be
烧坏，就是这是他们的
firewood or
这
any
这
other
个
kind of fuel.
三个
So
特点吧，
the
就是七
ordinary
世界和
fire
有
could
情世
burn
界
out
的
the
还有可能有
ordinary
情世界
fuel.
当中的这个部分的这种燃料呢，就是依靠自性火来就是燃烧的。当然，这个可能自性火的话呢，就是它也是象征性的，就是燃烧我们的这个气世界，就是巴西的火啊，然后有燃烧就是我们这个里面的有
It could
成
burn
千上
out
万
to
的
the
动物啊、
forests
人类啊
of
这样的，然后
Amazon
同时呢也燃烧
or
就是
human
里面的
beings
这
or
个森林啊、
or
草木啊
animals
这样
or
的。
forests
那么
or
这三个呢，就是我们可以 对
vegetations
比
and
啊，
so on.
就
It
是
could
实际
burn
上
out
是
all of those.
这个
In such way, we can
就是
make
我们的这个死
comparisons.
亡呢，也相当于是一个火一样的， 一个
Death
延续
is
不断的
like
这个生命
fire.
呢，就是最后就是会坏的啊。我们每个人的
The life
每个
could
人的
be
这种死活
destroyed
的话呢，
by
不知道
such
什么时候出
fire
现，
of
就是
death.
让我们的
And
生命
nobody
就是
knows
最后啊
when
就有
this
些人可能是
fire
得什么
will
脑溢血啊，就有些人是得什么，
when
就这个
such
时候就是
death
火
will
就出
dawn
现
to
了
each
啊，就
and
是
every one of us.
有些人就是可
Sometimes
能
it
慢性
comes
病就是很长
rather
时间
quite
就折磨
suddenly.
有些人
Sometimes
是可能
it's
短的
very
时间当中
acute.
就
Sometimes
是这样
it's
的，这叫做是
because
死
of
火，就是让我
chronic
们像魔戒
illness.
火一样的，
So
整
this
个这个
is
世
the
界呢，就
fire
是
of
最后的
death
末尾。
that is
其
just
实这
like
里面很有
the
象征的意思吧。
end
比如
of
说一
world,
个人死
end
的
of
话，对
time
这个人
fire
来讲是这个世界已经
that
结束了，
destroys
就是应该是
this
一个魔
world
戒火，
and
对
that
吧？就是这
destroys
样的。
the cult.
然后那个我们的这
So
个
that
疾
is
病的话呢，
called
就像
the
地狱火一样的，
so
就
the
身体产
the
生疾病的时候非
fire
常
of
非常的
death
痛苦啊。
is
就
just
原来
like
特别强壮，就是
the
有
fire at
力
the
量、
end
有
of
力
time.
气的人，一
And
生病
then
的时候呢，
sickness, the fire of sickness.
这里也痛，那里也痛。真的话，这种默契就是什么麻雀，就是 被
And
10
people would
度
feel
10
that
度
it
击中
hurts
的麻
here
雀一
and it
样的，
hurts
就是
there.
10度击中的麻雀的话
As
呢，
a
就是
Patrol
一动不
Rinpoche
动，
said
就是动都不了。
that
我们生病
someone
甚至
who's
一点
ill,
干嘛，就是或者是一点点的话呢，都不
then
行了。就是这是像地
they
狱
are
火，就是
like
照
a
受众生一样。
sparrow that is
然后
hit by a
最后一个是
stone
什么
and
呢？
cannot
就是
move
就是
at all.
衰老的
So
话。
sometimes
那么这个
even
呢，
a
我
small
们的这个
cold
清晨呢，
could
就是
make you
慢慢
feel
就
rather
就
very
变了，
weak.
就是就刚
So
才那
this
个
kind of
这
fire
种自
is
性火呢，就是燃烧的
corresponding
原
to
来
the
是什
fire
么
of
森林啊，就是放物啊这些，
fire
烧完了以
of
后什么
hell
都没有
realm.
了啊，就什么
And
都没
then
有了。
ordinary
所以
fire.
就是年轻的时候特别好看，然后老了以后的话呢，
Ordinary
自己照
fire
自己的镜
corresponds
子
to
的
the
时候，
fire of
就有些
aging
人很生气，就
that
是把镜
is
子就是
constantly
扔了撕
going
了。
and
其实不是
it
这个
happens
镜子
to
来害你的，
everyone.
你自己老了，就是
People would
不应该
then
这
look
样的。
into
就
the
是
mirror
这是
and
我
they
听说
hate
是
it
有这样
what
的，
they
就是
see
就
and throw their
因为
mirrors
苦不堪
away.
言，就是
In
这一
fact,
看到
that's
就
not
自
the
己心
mirror's
情不舒
fault,
服，
isn't
然
it?
后就开始
People
这样
don't
的，就是
like
这
how
种
they
变
look
化呢，就是
in
像
their
什么样
age.
子
They
自行
want
火一样
to
的。
be
那
how
么
they
这三
looked
种
when
呢，
they
就
were
是叫
young.
这
So
个
this
此地的，就是
corresponds
这种
to the
变化，
fire
就是
of
此地的
to the
变化，
ordinary
就是
fire
那
that
个
is the fire of
无著菩
aging.
萨的注释里面就是引用了那个《深
According
曼
to
经》嘛，就
Asanga's
《深曼经》里
commentary,
面说
he
是这个
quoted
所谓
from
的这个
Shrimala
四的
Sutra.
话呢，就
He
是
said
更
that
坏，就是这个猪更坏，
death
那个我们的这个
is
更呢，就是会
the
坏的
death
意
of
思。然后所谓
faculties,
的这个肾呢，就是产生的话呢，那么就是
and the birth
叫什么啊？就是猪更呢，就是从肾，就是它从性
is
这个
the
产
birth
生，就是
of
深曼经里面就是
faculties.
肾和四呢，就是主要是
So
安
in
立在更
Shrimala,
上面啊，就
it
是一个是
and
更坏
how
的
it
四，就是四
explains birth
更
and death,
新产生
it
的时候
talks
呢，
about it
就是
from
叫
the
这
aspect
个
of
坏，
the
就是
birth
叫
and
这
death
个肾啊，
of
就是这个
faculties.
身四方面呢，就是也这样的这种吸收。但不管怎么样呢，我们如果真正这个得到了一些真
Anyhow, if
就真悟啊，就是这样的
we
话呢，
have
就是
some
实际上就是
realization,
对这个生老死病呢，就是可以
then
远
we'll
离
be
的。
able
就像
to
有一个大乘的这种虚空藏啊
be
正法经啊，就是
unfettered
这个
by
经里面
birth,
说这
death,
个
old age, and
什么
sickness.
这个什么
According
老病死
to
法呢，就是即梦里，然后少乱世界呢，就是注众生啊，就是这种老和病和死的话呢，就特别可怕的，就是它会扰乱就是我们的这
According
个世
to
间的
the
这个每一个众生。
teachings
然后
of
不老不死
the
安乐们呢，我出家为请求故，就是其实
Mahayana
通过
Bodhisattva
出家的这种这个
Sutra,
修
it
行
says
呢，
that
最后
old
呢就是
ages
到达这
and
个不老不
sickness
死的
and
这
death
种快乐
are
道啊，就
vicious.
像
It
释迦牟尼佛呢，
disturbs
就看
the
到
mind
就
of
是
all the
窗外
sentient
呢
beings
有
in this
很多这
world.
个生老死病
So
的状况，
the
然后最后
the
呢
happy
自己
gate
这个
towards
寻找一个什
no
么样
death
呢？
and
就是
no
永远就
old
是不
age.
生不死的，
Therefore,
就是这么
I
一个
vow
就是
to
永恒
renounce
的
renunciate and practice with diligence. So they because of such old age, sickness, and death is so vicious. Therefore, as a bodhisattva, they would then renounce it to practice diligently for the sentient beings as well as themselves. So, practice with such kind of pure practice is so important. Lots of masters, they talk about the practice of Shravakam and Pradika Buddha, and then the different practice of Mahayana bodhisattvas. So Shravakas and Pradika Buddhas, Shravakas would then first to meet a good teacher who teaches them, and then to practice. And Pradika Buddhas would then enter into retreat areas to realize the teaching, because with the teaching, but without practice, it won't help anyone. And then eventually, after you attend the realization, you should liberate and benefit sentient beings like a bodhisattva. So these are the three kinds of practices according to the three yanas. So previously, we've already studied how the mundane beings are in terms of where the Buddha nature resides. I think this is really well taught. Really well taught by Lord Maitreya. And this one concludes the previous part. The next part started talking about the bodhisattva's aspect. The first one, unchangingness in the partly unpurified and partly purified phase. And the first part has two aspects, which is extensive and then specific. Extensive and brief explanation. Brief and extensive explanation. The way bodhisattvas appear as being subject to change, although they are not. So having realized thatness, the nature of the Dharmadhatu just as it is, to those of understanding are released from birth, sickness, aging, and death. Though free from destitute of birth and so on, they demonstrate these, since by their insight they have given rise to compassion for beings. So, above the first bhumi, the bodhisattvas has already attained the realization and level that is devoid of birth, sickness, old age, and death. They are devoid of any sickness and aging and all of these. So in the ultimate truth aspect, in the ultimate nature of the bodhisattvas, they've already realized the truth, the nature. Therefore, they're devoid of having to suffer from the birth, old age, sickness, and death. Although they've realized such, though free from the destitute of birth and so on, such as afflictions and birth and all of those. And because of that, they have wisdom. And they then voluntarily come to this world with compassion on one hand, they have already then realized the nature of birth, old age, sickness, and death. They can definitely just not be reborn in the samsara, but because of their great compassion, they voluntarily born in this world for the sentient beings, to benefit the sentient beings, and manifest in the way that they live the same way as the mundane beings. According to Vimalakirti Sutra, it says that in Vimalakirti Sutra, I think you probably remember when Vimalakirti was asked that who is your father, who is your mother, who is your, what is your job, and so on. And then at that time, Vimalakirti said that he may manifest old age, illness, and death to accomplish the liberation of the host of beings, comprehending that all things are like phantasmagorical transformations. His penetration is without hindrance. So the bodhisattvas then would manifest to be reborn in this world. In fact, this is quite important because the bodhisattvas, although they are in this world, but they do not suffer. But they come to this world because they have great compassion. I really hope that you could remember this. And what does this mean? The noble have eradicated the suffering of death, of dying, falling ill, and aging at its root, which is being born due to karma and poisons. There being no such cause, there is no such fruit. Which means the bodhisattvas, after attaining bhumis, because they've already eradicated the because they've already eradicated the different kind of mental poisons and karma and mental activities at its root. The previously we've already previously stated the three kinds of great suffering, that is dying, falling ill, and aging. In fact, they've already eradicated all of these kind of three sufferings at its root. Why don't they have these kind of sufferings? It is because the karma had already, the karma and afflictions, the mental poisons had already been completely cut off at its root. And the fact that the bodhisattvas do not have karma, do not have the incorrect thoughts, they do not suffer. In the Tibetan version, it says that because the bodhisattva do not have karma and mental poisons, therefore they do not suffer from the suffering from dying, falling ill, and aging. So because there's no incorrect thoughts, and there's no karma, there's no mental poisons, therefore they do not suffer. And when they are benefiting sentient beings, it is rather quite easy for them. Sometimes we feel that how pitiful some bodhisattvas, they did so and so. Oh, as an ordinary being, we feel sorry for the bodhisattvas. They must have suffered. Sometimes the ordinary beings may feel that. But in fact, bodhisattvas do not have suffering, do not have birth, age, and sickness and death. They do not suffer at all. But why do they manifest in such a way? In fact, it's no other than
那这个是
manifestation.
什么意思呢？就是
What does that
下面讲
mean?
用悲心现现呢，就是变化啊，就是它本来是没有这些变
Next
化，
one, it
它
says
没有这
that
个
the
变化。
way they
那
appear
么
as
刚才前面的
being
这个校正
subject
的
to
话
change
呢，
out
大
of
家
their
也应该
compassion.
经常能背
I
到
think
就
the
最好，
previous
就是
one,
因为
you should memorize
这
it
个
as
校正
well.
呢，就是在不同的这个场合当中，就是前辈大德们经常也是用的啊，就是这个甚至是没有这个
Lots of the previous masters quote this quite often
和病和苦啊，就
to
是
talk
没有
about how
这些
bodhisattvas do
这个
not suffer.
因为这些呢都是野火产生的，但是野
Because
火
all
是
of
它没有
these
的缘故，
are
就是这样讲。然后下面
all
呢
of
就
these
是
is
像这
sprung
个
from the
就是有悲心
karma
产生
and
的，就是
afflictions, and
真间
bodhisattvas
呢就
have
是真如
already
一超
eradicated
一超
them
一僧当
completely, therefore they
然
cannot suffer
被
from
尊
these.
视现生死即
So since
老
they
病
have
就是
seen
他这里
reality as it
甚
is,
至的话呢，就
they're
是他已
beyond
经完
being
全
more
见到了
and
这
so
个
on. Yet,
真如
as
就
the
是如来藏
embodiment
的
of
那么
compassion
这种人
itself,
如来藏的话
they
呢，
display
如来
birth,
藏的真
illness,
正的
old
本来
age,
面
and,
目的话呢，
and
他已
death.
经超越
So
了
the
就
true
是
face
所有
of
的这个轮
Buddha
回的这
nature
种生老
has
死
already
病啊，就是
completely
就
surpassed
是
the
这轮回当
birth,
中产生的各种各样的。
the
那这
birth,
样的
old
话呢，
age,
是不是
age,
他就
sickness,
永
and
远
death
不
in
会
the
实现在
samsara?
轮回当
But
中
does
呢？
that
并
mean
不
that
是这样的，
they
就是他呢，
never, ever
就是看到
enter
就
into
是很多
samsara
众生呢
or
没有
manifest
懂
in
到这样
samsara?
的
No,
这
it
个
is
道
not.
理，所以在
Because
众生
when
面前
they
呢，就
see
是他
that the
实
sensitive
现
beings
就是
still do not
这
get
个相
such,
信的，实
still do
现呢
not
就是
understand
死亡，
such
实现
profound
呢就是
meaning,
这个衰老，
therefore they
实
would
现什么呢？
manifest
就是产生这个疾病。
in the
那
way
么这
that
样的
they
话呢，
also
实际
have
上是
oldness,
众生呢，
sick,
就是也完全的是
birth,
可
old
以
age,
就是度化。
birth,
比如
old
说我
age,
们有一些
sickness, and
高
death,
僧大德呢，就是他
in
最后
order to
真
benefit
正
the
的一些
sentient
菩
beings
萨的
and
这个
liberate
化现呢，
sentient beings.
因为他的
As
这
some
个
masters,
涅
they
槃
would
和缘起
manifest
的
in
话呢，
such a way
让
so
这个很多人就是对这
that
个
they can
这种
benefit
这个大菩
beings
萨有信
accordingly.
心的人的话呢，像这么了
People
不
who
起的
have
大菩
great
萨的话呢，最
devotion
后呢
towards
实现这个涅槃，实现缘
great
起的话，那我们就
masters
是
who
就
they
有什么
consider
可
as
说的呢？就
bodhisattvas,
像佛陀，像佛陀
then
那样的
they
这样
would
的
feel
圣像，他
that
最后呢，
such
就是在
great
梭罗
master
苏
even manifested
梭
in
罗
the
双
way
苏
that
这个当中呢，就是实现缘起的话，那我们的这个区
that
区如
he
生
also
有什么可
then
靠的
suffer
啊？
at
就是
a
有什么
death,
可靠
then
的？
we
我
should
们会
then
就是通
not
过
to
他的
rely
这种
upon
这个
anything at all
就是
because
实
there's
现
nothing
缘起呢，就是也
reliable
产生这
in
个无
this
常
world.
性的，
So
有些是依此
whenever
而证悟的。
the
还
people
有一些
with
呢，就是实现这个
devotion
圣病
see
了，
the
就像佛
masters
陀的话呢，他在
manifest the death, then they will understand the impermanence. When they see the masters or Shakyamuni Buddha appeared as
因为我
having
今天呢，这个什么这个教就是已经刺上这个经
he
济
said
书啊，
that
还有
well,
因为我
I'm
今天的
having
背
headache
痛啊，就
because
是
of
佛陀
so
在
and
像
so.
这样
My
的这种
feet
现象，佛陀都有
is
经常有
hurt
这个
because
生
of
病的
so
现
and
象
so.
的话，那我
My
们这
back
个
is hurt
很
because
多
of
其
so
他
and
人
so.
对这个轮回的真
And
相呢，也
by
会有
hearing
这
such
种
stories from the
有这
enlightened
种
ones,
这个
the
不同的
realized
这种
ones,
这个
then
处理
ordinary
信啊，
beings that
我
they
都想
would
以前我们
give
那个
rise
上师
to
如意宝的话呢，就
renunciation
是每次都
and
就是
understanding
生
of
病啊，就
karma.
是住医院呐，我自
Sometimes
己也
when I
经
think
常
of
就是
Ponzo
去
Rinpoche,
这
I
个
also
就
sometimes
跟着这个上师就是去照顾啊，照
would
顾的过
go
程当中，每
with
次都是
Ponzo
在医院里
Rinpoche
面，
and take care
有
of
时候
him.
冷射术一
And
些病人啊，有时
sometimes
候冷射术一些
I
护士啊，
notice
有时候
that
冷射术一
how
些这个
Ponzo
医生啊，
Rinpoche
我想哇，这个上师的。
would be able to magnetize and then expound Dharma to some doctors, to some nurse, and so on. I'm not only saying this, in fact, this is my understanding. And the more I notice, the more I feel that it is only because in the hospitals there are so many sentient beings and they need to hear the Dharma. That's why Ponzo Rinpoche went there. He got sick and then had to go to hospital.
然后到了这个年迈的时候呢，哇，就是就显现上
Also, when he
就
appeared
很多
to
就是可能跟我们普通人一样的，
to
就是有点
age,
这个就很多方面记忆啊，包括这个
his
表达
memory,
有一些
his
就不同的时候呢，
faculties,
这时候就是可能感觉得到，就
then
是这个轮回就是这样
all
的，像这个
got
这些菩萨那么了不起的，最后实
weakened.
现就是生
And
老
then
死
at
病的
that
话
time I
那我
felt
们就是更不用说
that it
了，
is
所以我
because
们
of
对
impermanence,
整个这个轮回的话
because
呢，
of
还是
aging,
产生极大的这个
such
严厉性
phenomena
这
happen and such
因为有些菩萨
manifestation
呢，就是他通
happens. And in such a way, I felt renunciation from samsara. There is a sutra, the name of it is
会害就是害龙啊，会害金吧，就是无主菩萨就引用了好多
it is the Wisdom Ocean requested a sutra. Within the sutra, it tells the story in the commentary, I think, where a prince fell into the toilet. And the entourage, as well as the mother of the prince, they did not want to dive in and save him because it really stinks and really dirty. So nobody jumped in to save the prince. They were crying and they were asking for help, but no one jumped in, except later the father of the prince came and jumped into the toilet to save his son. So given this story, Buddha explained, saying that this toilet is the samsara, is a metaphor of samsara, and this person who fell into the toilet is a metaphor of sentient beings. And the father of the prince is the bodhisattva, who has skillful means as well as bravery and courage. And the mother and entourage, who were very much in pain but did not went in to save him, are the Pratika Buddhas and Shravakas. So bodhisattvas have very different actions. They would jump into the samsara to save the sentient beings, just as the father jumped into the toilet to save his own son by himself. Just as that bodhisattvas would jump into samsara to save the sentient beings by themselves. So, to save the sentient beings by themselves is the action of bodhisattvas. Save as much as possible. When you're saving them, when you're helping them, are the sentient beings feeling gratitude for you? Maybe not. I quoted from Carnegie, Carl Carnegie, where I think also he quoted from a British scholar. He said that not all beings knows how to feel gratitude. It is only the decent ones knows how to feel gratitude. Maybe because of the nature, maybe because of in terms of maybe because of the Westerners' point of view, where then he gave this example of a person who is a judge saved 78 people. But later on, none of them went to him and thanked him. Also, he said that there was only one person at the time of Christmas. He remembered that there was a person at the time of Christmas gifting other people of $300, but none of those people who received the money thanked him. There was another story of how Jesus, on the way to Jerusalem, he saved 10 lepers, 10 people with leprosy. And out of the 10 people, only one person showed gratitude. The other nine people all run away without showing any gratitude. A bodhisattva may, bodhisattva will then save sentient beings without any complaints or any sense of regret. Sometimes I contemplate upon myself that I sent about a few thousand students to university through our charity, but lots of them do not send any letter or any gratitude letter. The other day I was having a meeting, and I asked the person who was in charge of the buildings over here and said, well, had anyone thanked you? And he said, no, not really, except there was this one person who gave me some apples. So if you want to make a contribution only because you want to receive gratitude, I think this is not really reasonable. In the West, I think the costume is that they will be nice to you when they're happy, and they will then send you some thank you notes or so, and that's the sense of gratitude already. That's their way of showing gratitude already. Although they have Thanksgiving and all of these kind of festivals, but the true sense of thanks, the true sense of gratitude, I think, it still resides in the East, in the Eastern tradition. So that is why Carnegie said that a majority of people do not know how to show gratitude or do not know how to feel gratitude. Only the decent ones knows what gratitude is. There was a historical story of China, Cao Cao, who was the emperor. When he was poor, a family was really nice to him, and after he then became an emperor, instead he didn't know how to show gratitude to them or pay back their kindness, and then at that time he decided to kill the family who helped him. I think this is quite a complex feeling, that at a time that they don't really understand how to, they do not know how to repay other people's kindness. Also, they want to erase off their past history that they did not like. Just like some students, they just want to erase the kind of history that he did not want other people to know. So, in our world, the human mind is rather quite complex, especially in China, in some of the very complex culture. Even at times that you feel that they should definitely feel gratitude, but they don't. Just as when people do not have any authority, they were nice to everyone, but once they become the one with lots of power, they would then use such power or even abuse such power to create obstacles for other people. Similarly to some corporations, after a long time of training their employees and giving lots of benefits to the employees, but when the employees gain some ability, they would then leave such a corporation and use their resources and experiences to harm the corporation or people who showed great kindness to them before. But in Mahayana teaching is really great. When it comes to such complex world, we should then have skillful means to face our society. When the society and the world is really dark, if you have only a small flame of lantern, your light will be easily to be overcome by the darkness.
就按照这个东方文化也好，尤其是我们这个藏地的话呢，就是感恩这一
In the
点呢，
East,
确实是
especially
好
in
像
the
现在也
Tibetan
是
plateau,
有
I
个非
think
常
the
就
teaching
是
of
这种
gratitude
根深
is of
蒂固的一
great
种这个理念。但现在的
emphasis.
年轻人的这种这个就心理的
But the
话
young
呢，就是
people
也是
in
随着
this
这个可能
generation,
西方的一些
maybe
现实
because
主义
they've
也好，自我
changed,
中心也好，或者说是物质主
maybe
义也好，
they've
就
been
很多
influenced
这种
greatly
这个
by
信
the
念呢也不
Western
断地在变
culture,
化
such as
就这样的这
materialistic
个社会当
views,
中
such
能不能
as
用上这个大
the
乘的无有条件的饶益一切众生的这样的这
utilitarian
种精神
view
呢，
and so
也很
on,
难说。但不
then
管怎么样呢，我
they
们还是
are
要非常的这
changed.
个赞叹，就是这些大菩萨们呢，在
We should
在轮回当中呢，就是实现各种形象
compare
的就是
ourselves and look
利益
at
众
how
生
the
嘛，
great
就是这一点
bodhisattvas
是我
were,
们也应该
and
随序
do
对吧
not hesitate and courageously
讲的
jump into samsara to benefit sentient beings. I think we should all study from that kind of spirit, and we'll stop here today.